कृष्णपृष्ठाय भूतले श्रीमते भक्तिवेदान्ता स्वामिनिति नामिने। सरस्वती देवी गौरवाणी प्रचारिणे निर्विशेषा शून्यवादी पाश्चात्य देशतारिणे। Krishna Chaitanya
His Divine Grace Shri Bhakti Vedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada ki Nitya Leela Pravishta Om Paramahamsa Parivajagacharya Astatara Satasi Srimad. His Divine Grace Srila Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Thakur Prabhupada ki Ananta Koti Vaishnavrinda ki His Confounder Acharya Srila Prabhupada ki Namacharya Srila Haridas Thakur Prem se kaho Shri Krishna Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Srivasadi Gaura Bhakta Vrinda ki Shri Shri Radha Shyama Kund Radha Kund Giri Govardhan ki Shri Vrindavan Dham ki Shri Mayapur Navadip Dham ki Shri Jagannath Puri Dham ki Ganga Mai ki Yamuna Mai ki Tulsi Devi ki Bhakti Devi ki Shri Harinam Sankirtan ki Brihat Madanga Transcendental Book Distribution ki Shri Sri Gornatai ki Shri Sri Radha Madhava ki Shri Sri Radha Shyama Sundara ki Nitai Gaur Premanandi. All glories to the assembled devotees, all glories to Shri Guru and Shri Gauranga. Jaya Radha Madhava Kunjabi Adi Jaya Radha Madhava Kunjabi Adi Gopi Jana Balaba Girivara Dhari Gopi Jana Balaba Girivara Dhari Jasodanandana Brajachandaranjana Jasodanandana Brajachandaranjana Jamuna Tira Vanachadi Jamuna Tira Vanachadi Jaya Radha Madhava Kunjabi Adi Madhava Kunjabi Jaya Radha Madhava Kunjabi Adi Madhava Kunjabi Adi Gopi Jana Balabha Girivara Dhari Gopi Jana Balabha Girivara Dhari Girivara Dhari Jasodanandana Brajachandaranjana Jasodanandana Brajachandaranjana Jamuna Tirahana Chadi Jamuna Tirahana Chadi Jaya Radha Madhava Kunjabi Hadi Madhava Kunjabi Jaya Radha Madhava Kunjabi Hadi Madhava Kunjabi Jayom Vishnupad Paramahamsa Parivajagacharadjastatara Srimad, His Divine Grace, A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada ki, Ananta Koti Vaishnavrinda ki, Grantaraj Srimad Bhagavatam ki, Gaur Premanandi. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 3, Chapter 12, Text number 3. Drishtva papiyasam trishtim natmanam bhava bhava manyata bhagavatyana putrena manasanyam tato srijat Drishtva papiyasim shrishtim natmanam bhava manyata bhagavadhyana putrena manasanyam tato srajat Drishtva papiyasim shrishtim natmanam bhavasanyata Bhagavatyana putrena manasanyam tatosit drishtva, by singing papiyasim, sinful, trishtim, creation, na, did not, atmanam, unto himself, bahu, much pleasure, amanyata, felt, bhagavat, on the personality of Godhead, dhyana, meditation, Putrena, purified by that. Manasa, by such a mentality. Anyam, another. Tattaha, thereafter. Asrejat, created. Translation, seeing such a misleading creation as a sinful task, Rama did not feel much pleasure in his activity, and therefore he purified himself by meditation on the personality of Godhead. Then he began another term of creation, purport. Although he created the different influences of nations, Lord Brahma was not satisfied in performing such a thankless task. But he had to do it because most of the conditioned souls wanted it to be so. Lord Krishna says in Bhagavad Gita 15:15 that he is present in everyone's heart and he is helping everyone to either remember or forget. The question may be raised, why the Lord, who is all merciful, helps one to remember and another to forget? Actually, his mercy is not exhibited in partiality towards one and enmity towards another. The living entity, as part and parcel of the Lord, is partially independent because he partially possesses all the qualities of the Lord. Anyone who has some independence may sometimes misuse it due to ignorance. When the living entity prefers to misuse his independence and glide down toward nescience, the all-merciful Lord, first of all, tries to protect him from the trap, but when the living entity persists in gliding down to hell, the Lord helps him to forget his real position. And that was yesterday's verse. The Lord helps the falling living entity glide down to the lowest point, just to give him the chance to see if he is happy by misusing his independence. Paragraph. Almost all the conditioned souls who are rotting in the material world are misusing their independence, and therefore 5 kinds of nescience are imposed upon them. As an obedient servitor of the Lord, Brahma creates all these as a matter of necessity, but he is not happy in doing so because a devotee of the Lord naturally does not like to see anyone falling down from his real position. Persons who do not care for the path of realization get full facilities from the Lord for executing their proclivities to the fullest extent, and Brahma helps in that procedure without fail. We mentioned yesterday, thankless task. Here it's repeated, thankless task. And in the verse, papiyasim, sinful. Brahma considered it not just thankless, but sinful. Why is he doing something sinful? It's sinful. If he thinks it's sinful, why is he doing it? Because the Lord asked him, although it's sinful, not exactly sinful. It's an instruction, but that's supposing you're not Lord Brahma. Supposing you're just somebody. And purposefully, consciously, arrangements are made so that someone or a group of someones are covered with these 5 things. Misuse of free will, for sure. And sinful? Well, it's propagating persons who take a position of influencing others, whether the title is the head of state, or the teacher, or the parent, or the leader of some kind or another. someone that has influence over others, and purposefully, knowingly, ignorance in these 5 different categories are increased. That's the way of life, knowingly or unknowingly. And it's worse knowingly, but knowingly or unknowingly, it's a bad situation. And it's the predominant situation. Prabhupada writes in the 2nd paragraph, almost all conditioned souls. What's a conditioned soul that's not doing this? Conditioned souls are doing this. Very liberal. Almost all. Meaning perhaps there are some that are not purposely propagating, just being in the mode of goodness to some extent, doing welfare work for others that's not really helping the living entity to become free from nescience. It's furthering their nescience in one way or another, deepening their involvement in illusory energy, one way or another. Doesn't leave a lot of options besides the option of surrender and submission to the personality of Godhead. Let's go back. The first verse of this chapter was a discussion that the influence of the Supreme Personality of Godhead in the form of time has now been described, and next is Brahma creating the universe with the assistance of time, energy, and the potencies given by the Supreme Lord to create. And he creates the universe through the agency of time, energy, etc. And it's not a pretty picture. Is it realism or pessimism? Depends how you look at it. It's encouraged for the devotee to be pessimistic about the option of finding happiness in a place where there's no happiness. I'm pessimistic that there's happiness out there in the field of material energy as an enjoyer. I'm pessimistic. A realist is, excuse me, but it's not just pessimism, it doesn't exist. And that which is taken as enjoyment is the opposite. It's furthering suffering. So the influence of these 5 are there. Now the statement that is made in the purport is, Brahma does this because living entities want it. But it's not exactly they want the suffering that comes from these forms of ignorance. They want to ignore. That's a free will choice. And so the byproduct of wanting to ignore the Supreme Personality of Godhead results in these 5 categories of ignorance, and then the suffering. So they don't want the suffering, but they're attached to the cause of suffering. That's us. We don't like suffering, but we're attached to the cause. And it takes different shapes, different persons, modes of nature, cultural conditioning, species, personality types, and on and on and on. Less of variegatedness in illusion. But the end point is, in principle, the same. Forgetfulness of the personality of Godhead due to these coverings. And then there are subsets of those coverings. It's a very vast and powerful network. It's hard to extract once one is in the material atmosphere. It's hard to extract oneself from the material atmosphere. Is this important to understand? If it's not important to understand, why is it in the Bhagavatam? So it's important to understand, given the fact it's in the Bhagavatam, it's part of understanding what's what, or Sambandha again, how does it work? Something like the verse of Bhagavad Gita, Matak Parasaram Nanyat Kinchit Asti Dhananjaya, there's no truth superior to me. There's no truth superior to me. Truth in the sense of that which is the source of other things, that sense of the truth. Krishna is that which is the source of other things, the absolute truth. There's no truth superior to Krishna. And therefore, the purpose, one of the purposes of including this is, how did we get here? And then, how did we get here tells us something about how to get out. Like most of us came through those doors over there. And so that's how to get out. At the entrance and the exit, there's a big sign, exit. So what's the exit from the condition? One has to understand the exit door has everything to do with how we got here. So how did we get here? We desired. We didn't desire the suffering, we desired the enjoyment. But the enjoyment in ignorance is not enjoyment. But enjoyment is in ignorance, it may be taken as enjoyment. Prabhupada's very simple example. Alcohol. Some people have become addicted. They can't do without it. Alcoholism. Nasty. But practice at it when it becomes enjoyable. I mean, not necessarily the drinking, but the effect of drinking. And so the drinking then becomes enjoyable because the effect of drinking is what the effect of drinking is. And that's not enjoyment, that's suffering. And so forth. That which is not is accepted as what is, and that which is accepted as what is not. And the show goes on. So how do we get here? Through the exit door. Just like here, what did Brahma do? He was feeling, sinful. Seeing such a misleading creation as a sinful task, papiyasim shrishtim, what did he do? He engaged in meditation upon the personality of Godhead. Dhyana, Bhagavat Dhyana. Putrena. Putrena here is purified. Bhagavat Dhyana Putrena. So whether he saw it as sinful, which is what the verse says, or he saw it as thankless, but he did it anyways, because that's what Krishna wanted, not like a whole bunch of people going to say, oh, thank you, Brahma, for creating misery, or the source of misery, or covering me in illusion so I can think that I'm the enjoyer. Brahma, thank you so much. You're very kind. So they're not going to thank him for the thankless task. They're just going to go on in the illusory position of ignoring the creator and the sub-creator, the source of everything and the creator of the universe, and move on with being the enjoyer. Kind of like a child. That they're not thinking about where the resources for their toys and stuff are coming from, and feeling happiness because the kindness is being offered to them by their toys and stuff. I mean, it's exceptional if someone is thinking in that way. It's just enjoying, playing and eating and dressing and this thing and that thing. in La La Land without acknowledgement. And some are acknowledging. So religion, in one sense, is to acknowledge there's a source, and I'm grateful for the source, and so I offer prayers or do some ritual or something to say thank you, acknowledging. Then you can bump it up a little bit with other forms or expressions of acknowledging the Supreme, the source of everything. But then to be engaged non-stop, which is what Brahma is doing, even when it's like a thankless task. He's doing it because that's who he is. He understands his position. And same for us. I wanted to read something a little bit inspired by Gopal Hari's comment yesterday about what Vishwanath Chakravarti had to say about one of Brahma's prayers. Here's Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur on this particular verse. It's interesting, quite interesting, because what we heard from the previous chapter is divisions of time. And one of the divisions of time, like a real big one, is the two prarardhas. I'm sure you remember. Half of Brahma's day and the other half of Brahma's day makes Brahma's day. So what happens in between the two prarardhas? That's in Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur's commentary to this 3.12.3. He writes, this and the following verses, plural, show who the functions of vidya appeared in the form of the Kumaras and others from Brahma, in order to show that knowledge or vidya destroys ignorance or avidya. So he created, and the method of destruction of 5 types. Brahma and others who live for the whole life of Brahma's life entered into the Supreme Lord at the end of the first half of Brahma's life. Did you know that? Parentheses, first prarardha. Just as Brahma appears from a lotus flower on the first day of the second half of his life, as he did in the Padma Kalpa, the previous day, not the previous prarardha, but the previous day, that's the translation here. Brahma made the Kumaras and others appear at this time. Parentheses, though they actually live for Brahma's 100 years. So I'm assuming this is a translation mistake at the end of the previous prarardha, not the previous day. I'm assuming it's a mistake. But it's interesting. So there's the day of Brahma, and then there's the year of Brahma, and then there's the 50 years of Brahma, and at the end of the 50 years of Brahma, that's a prarardha. At the winding up of that first half of Brahma's day, Brahma's life, Brahma entered into the Supreme Lord at the end of the first half of Brahma's life. Parentheses, first prarardha. So it's a dissolution where he, Brahma, enters into the body of the Supreme Lord. And that Supreme Lord whose body he enters into, presumably, is probably found elsewhere with some more detail, Garbhodakshay Vishnu. And when the clock ticks and the end of his night comes, and the next day, at the end of the beginning of the second half, the lotus stem, the lotus flower, Brahma appears again, and he does the whole shebang again. Interesting. Now, if you were Vishnu and you wanted to be a creator of the universe, is that how you would do it? Doesn't really matter. He doesn't need to. He has to do it like you would do it. That's the explanation. And then it gets wound up at the end of his life. And then it's not just a devastation, but the whole universe is withdrawn. And all the living entities in that universe, and all the other universes, and all the living entities in those other universes are withdrawn, and the living entities enter into the body of Mahavishnu for that susupti period, equal duration of Brahma's life, of equal duration. The whole thing is suspended. And the living entities are in the body of Mahavishnu for a long time. And then again, exhalation. So far, I've been unsuccessful in finding an explanation to that purport in 3.11.42. I'll read the purports. If anybody listening wants to do some fantastic research, see if you can find an answer to this one. There's a devotee that's helping me, but so far we haven't come up with something. Here's the 3.11.42. Translation and purport. The Supreme Personality of Godhead, Sri Krishna, is therefore said to be the original, the cause of all causes. No problem. Thus, the spiritual abode of Vishnu is eternal without a doubt. No problem. And it is also the abode of Mahavishnu, the origin of all manifestations. So Mahavishnu is eternally situated in the spiritual realm, the spiritual abode of Vishnu, Vishnu Loka. No problem. Purport. Lord Mahavishnu, who is residing in Yoga Nidra on the causal ocean and creating innumerable universes by his breathing process, only temporarily appears in the Mahatattva for the temporary manifestation of the material worlds. There's one reference. Temporary manifestation. Next sentence. He is a plenary portion of Lord Krishna, and thus, although he is not different from Lord Krishna, his formal appearance in the material world as an incarnation is temporary. Twice. So here's my doubt that's so far not answered. In the process of creation, there's resting period, time passes, time as we know it passes, there's the cosmic manifestation, there's the maintenance of the cosmic manifestation, there's the withdrawal of the cosmic manifestation, the inhalation. And then, again, cyclical time, again creation, maintenance and dissolution, resting period of equal duration as the manifestation, the resting period, and then again creation, etc. Cyclical time. Question. Why is this word temporary manifestation? Because what's temporary about it? The creation is temporary, Mahavishnu is eternal, and his residing in the Mahatattva and creation, annihilation, creation, maintenance, annihilation goes on cyclically, eternally. Where's the temporary manifestation part? The question clear? Any question about the question? So if you know somebody that can reference this and get an answer to why Prabhupada chose the word temporary manifestation twice, so apparently it's not an accident or transcriber's mistake or something like that. So once again, his exhalation, we discussed this a bit yesterday, with his exhalation, golden, according to Brahma Samhita language, which parallels, matches the Bhagavatams, golden seeds, specifically the language of Sri Brahma Samhita is sperms, impregnating the Prakriti. Prakriti in this case is given the name Pradhan. It's just a state of Prakriti where it's undifferentiated matter. Mahavishnu glances, and the living entities are carried by his glance along with the time energy, and the primordial impregnation takes place, etc., etc., etc. Garbhodaksha, so as the differentiation of Pradhan happens, the exhalation forming golden seeds are sent out into this now Mahatattva differentiated state, and the different elements cling or conglomerate, Bhaktisiddhanta's language, upon the golden seeds, and the universes start to form with shells. And then Mahavishnu, expands within the hollow of each universe as Garbhodaksha Vishnu, who then perspires or manifests. The Garbhodak ocean fills up half, and so forth and so on. And then manifests Brahma from his lotus navel. And Brahma does what Brahma does, and he lives for 2 parardhas. At the end of the first parardha, we're hearing from Vishwanath, he enters again into the body of the Supreme Lord. Now, into the body of the Supreme Lord doesn't say Mahavishnu, so presumably it's Garbhodaksha Vishnu. And when he enters into the body of Garbhodaksha Vishnu, what's going on upstairs? The other half that's besides the Garbhodak ocean. Everything is withdrawn. But there are some living entities that live for the entire duration of Brahma's life, and the 4 Kumaras are included. And then they're manifest again at the end of the next parardha. The lotus flower, Brahma's manifest, and so forth. Cyclical time. So back to the message of the purport. That's the mechanics, or some of the sequential events. And why is it there? The partiality question is raised in this purport. We discussed it with Queen Kunti's prayers. He's not partial. He appears partial. He's not partial. He is reciprocating with living entities' desire. And as much as the living entities desire him, he gives himself. Literally, he gives himself. Literally, he gives himself. and all the abodes of the Lord and all the features in the material world according to one's regard for the Supreme Lord, he gives himself. And the agency through which he gives himself is bhakti, which is the expansion of his internal potency. Bhakti Devi is an expansion of Radharani, who gives us the opportunity for devotional service through agencies of representatives of her. So it's a nice system. And those that don't want that, they don't have to have that. They get something else, depending upon desire. So, partiality or impartiality? Impartiality. We've all heard it, God is all good, God is all powerful, God is all great. Why does he create a place where people suffer? The answer, people want it. Wait a minute, they don't want the suffering. But they want separate enjoyment, which is ignorance, which brings suffering. And he as the purport says, he tries to, please choose something else. No. Okay, there's consequences choosing that one. I don't care. Okay. Not partiality. It's important. So then, why do bad things happen to good people? Because there's misuse of free will somewhere along the way, including presently. That's why we have material bodies and minds and coverings and suffering because of our rebellious nature. Yeah, but he or she or I am, good. I don't have rebellious nature. I'm sorry. You have rebellious nature. The very fact we have material bodies is evidence. It's a flag flapping in the wind. Rebellious. Not so. I'm not rebellious. It's so. You wouldn't get a body otherwise. And all of the other things. The previous verse. Because we wanted. Let's see if there's some discussion. Yes.
Well, back to that question from the text 42 in the 11th chapter. I looked for some reference myself. I couldn't find anything. But then I was reading the purport again, and I was wondering if it can be read slightly differently. In the sense that Prabhupada is saying that Lord Mahavishnu, who is lying on the causal ocean, etc., only temporarily appears in the Mahatattva for temporary manifestation in the material world. One way that I was understanding it is not necessarily that Mahavishnu's form itself is temporary, but the manifestation of Mahavishnu in the Mahatattva is temporary. So as he expands in different forms in the Mahatattva, that is temporary.
Do it again. That was pretty clever. I don't think I agree with your reading, but try it again.
He says only Mahavishnu only temporarily appears in the Mahatattva. Oh. So as I understand it, Mahavishnu is lying on the causal ocean, glances at the Mahatattva, and manifests different forms, including Garbhodakshaya Vishnu, within the Mahatattva. But he himself on the causal ocean is separate from the Mahatattva.
No? That's not what it says. Not what it says. I'm not convinced.
I mean, that's how I can read it.
Nice try. I've been too busy to, contact this scholar, that scholar, the other scholar, and Gopal Hari, can you ask your brother the answer to this question? Maybe he has the answer to this question. He's quite a scholar. Maybe he has a nice answer. Maybe he'll come up with the same thing Jimuna Jivana has said just now. Anything else?
It's a comment, Guru Maharaj. During our last yatra in Udupi, you made a statement and you gave some examples that has really stayed with me, and it was very striking. Obedience is the first law of discipline.
Yes.
And Lord Brahma is such an incredible example of that, where he's called upon to do a service that is in misalignment of his own internal value of compassion upon the living entities. And yet his satisfaction is in being obedient to the will and the desire of the Supreme Lord. So I was thinking, within the institution of ISKCON, we may be called upon to do some service where, because it's an institution, there are policies that may not necessarily align fully with our internal values. And yet the satisfaction is in choosing to be obedient to the body of Srila Prabhupada, ISKCON, and finding satisfaction in that sense, in the relationship with Srila Prabhupada.
It gets a little fuzzy when not only an individual, but then an individual talks to other individuals that come up with, this is schisms, or what Bhaktivinoda Thakur calls sectarianism, even within an institution. That's, a group of people say, this is the founder Acharya's view, and we hold these truths to be self-evident. The founder Acharya intended this, not that. And then some other people say, that's not so. And then some other people, some of those people may say, the ultimate managing authority is the GBC, and some say, well, the GBC hogwash. It gets to be unpleasant. So how to deal with different views of what our founder Acharya or the Gaudiya mission, the Gaudiya line says. Then, it's so much depends upon not just the administrators, but, the qualified brahmanas. And that's not a small thing. It's one of the topics I want to speak about this weekend, how important it is to become a qualified brahmana, and what's the behavior and characteristics of a qualified brahmana. And it's not just you got mantras, so now you're a brahmana. Someone may get the mantras and they're now a brahmana, but they don't have the qualities. And how important it is that there are such people to continue going forward in time to guide, which is very important. Well, that person's the qualified brahmana, not me. So become the qualified brahmana. First-class men, and first-class women. And know how to behave respectfully even when there's differences of view, and not be disrespectful. Which is a sign of a qualified brahmana. I'm just commenting on your comment. Something else? Srila Prabhupada ki? Gaur Premanandi.